Support for WUWM podcast comes from Hop Harvest and Vine and Good Harvest Market in Pewaukee, part of One Destination, combining farm-to-table dining, local craft beers, and organic groceries under one roof. More at goodharvestmarket.com.
From 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR, this is Lake Effect. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Today, a Democratic Socialist may be elected mayor of New York City. We'll learn about that political party's resurgence here in Wisconsin. We'll visit a Milwaukee Dia de los Muertos event filled with dancing and ofrendas.
For us, it's not the clapping or the audience. It's more about sharing our culture and sharing what Mexico is. It is the beauty of Mexico.
Plus, we'll speak with astrophotographer Travis Nowitzki about his work capturing the human connection to the universe above us.
Everybody has either a connection to the sky and a story they want to share, or they have a desire to form a connection and to get stories of their own.
All that's coming up on Lake Effect. This is Lake Effect from 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Thanks for joining us today. New Yorkers go to the polls today to vote for their next mayor. The frontrunner is a Democratic Socialist, Zohran Mamdani. Here in Milwaukee, we have a long history with socialist politicians. But our socialist foundation was a thing of the past until Ryan Clancy was elected to the Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors in 2020. He was the first socialist politician to be elected to the board since 1956. Now, Clancy is a member of the Wisconsin State Assembly, where he's joined a small but growing socialist caucus. Representative Clancy spoke with Lake Effect's Joy Powers about socialist priorities and working with the Democratic Party.
How do you describe democratic socialism for those who are unfamiliar with the party and its ideologies?
Yeah, I mean, in its simplest term, it's making sure that everybody has enough and that nobody has a massive excess, right? So democratic socialism looks like everybody having housing, everybody having food, and, maybe nobody having an 18th yacht or vacation home.
To some, that simplification seems to maybe speak to their fears of socialism. It seems you yourself had some trepidation about socialism as a concept. How do you get people to view that differently? Is it with that kind of simple kind of description? Is it by going through the issues and your beliefs on it?
Yeah. I mean, it's really through policy. I think I tend to draw people into socialism by talking about what it actually looks like, not theoretically. And I have very little interest in socialist theory, but in practice. And I think, something like the right to counsel, something that, provides attorneys for people when they're facing eviction. People can see that makes sense. And when you go into it, you can realize that it makes financial sense too. And that, since we instituted that in Milwaukee County a few years ago, we've gotten a $4.60 return on every dollar we've spent doing the right thing and keeping people in their safe and supportive housing. Or you talk about, paid parental leave, another example of socialist policy. That just makes sense. It's the right thing to do to have parents spend time with their kids after they're born. And it's better for the economy. It's better for those families. It's better for the businesses they work for. A lot of the time, it's really terribly expensive and wrong to do the wrong thing.
When you're going through these different issues that are important to the Democratic Socialist Party, do you get pushback from people? Do you hear this kind of, reticence to really engage with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think usually we get that pushback just based on the word socialism. So, I think in more parts of the country, other than Milwaukee and Wisconsin, where we have kind of a long and proud socialist history, socialism, the S word, becomes a derogatory term. And it's applied to everybody from, Joe Biden to Ronald Reagan on his most liberal days, I suppose. And it's not. I mean, I think it's a much easier case to make for people who are from Wisconsin and Milwaukee. In Milwaukee, we've had 3 socialist mayors. Wisconsin has a proud history of socialism. But once you get into what it means, what it looks like, the actual socialist policy that we've enacted in Milwaukee and the positive effects of that, the pushback tends to fall away. So generally it goes something like, I'm a socialist. And the person says, oh, that must be terrible. Like, when did you start eating babies? And I'll say, no, like, which of my socialist policies don't you like? And we'll go through them and they'll say, well, all those are fine. Those policies actually all make sense, but socialism abstractly is bad. And that's fine. And I think, we can have a conversation about using that term or not. But I think that common sense policy where it's providing for everybody's basic needs just rings true to a lot of people, especially in 2025.
There are a number of socialists who have been elected throughout Wisconsin in different layers of our government. And one thing I find interesting is you're described, like on Wikipedia and things, as a Democratic Socialist, but also someone who's on the Democratic ticket. Can you explain how that works?
Yeah, I mean, so the Democratic caucus in the state, is much larger than the Socialist caucus, which is essentially within that Democratic caucus. We caucus with the Democrats. We are aligned on most issues. I would say that often it's the four of us within the Socialist caucus kind of leading the way in terms of, pushing the envelope a little bit. Rather than just asking for 60% special ed reimbursement. We're the ones out there asking for 90% or 100 and really trying to kind of pull along some of the folks who are a little bit more reticent to take those big leaps. So there's a lot that we're aligned on. Sometimes there's some tension there, and I think it's generally helpful and healthy.
How do you weigh that kind of, pushback versus unity when it does seem like the right is very unified often?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is, kind of keeping our eyes on the prize makes a lot of sense. And I want to be sure that, especially in 2025, that we're, directing most of our efforts towards pushing back on fascism. And that's not, in 2025, an exaggeration. We also need to make sure that we have other people in office who are willing to do that. We're not going to be voting like Republicans, frankly. And sometimes that requires some change of people in office. And there are political risks to doing that. But I'm always going to back the person I think is best equipped.
What is your hope for the future of democratic socialism? Do you see this as a party that could replace the current Democratic Party, or do you see it continuing to work inside of it?
That's a big debate within, I think, leftist circles, right? And it's, do you do a clean break or do you do a dirty break? And right now, I mean, I want to be clear that, Democratic Socialists in Wisconsin are not a party. We are an affiliation, we're a caucus, and I'm very proud, most days, right, to be part of that larger Democratic caucus. But we've seen some movements recently, and we've seen some issues, for instance, around Palestine, where some of the establishment Democrats are trying to push out those of us on the left. And I think when our target should be folks on the right, that's not a good strategy. And I think we end up alienating a lot of folks on the left who would otherwise, join together with Democrats, but are asking themselves at this point, are the Democrats the party for me, or do we have to do something else? So I'm a big fan of big tents. I want to be sure that there's room for everybody, but the tent seems to be getting smaller, and it seems to be putting folks on the left outside of it sometimes. And I think that's worrying. That's not how we're going to continue to win electoral victories. Sure.
Well, Representative Clancy, thank you so much for joining us here on Lake Effect.
Thank you, Joy. Appreciate your time.
Ryan Clancy represents Milwaukee's 19th district in the Wisconsin State Assembly. He spoke with Lake Effect's Joy Powers earlier this year when he was featured in Milwaukee Magazine. Did you know you can listen to Lake Effect as a podcast? Just search for Lake Effect wherever you get your podcasts to download and listen to us on demand. Later in the show, we'll talk to the founder of a Mexican folk dance group. But first, we'll hear about a short film about Milwaukee's Chinese laundry era. That's coming up next on Lake Effect on WUWM. You're listening to Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. A new state historical marker in Milwaukee honors the city's Chinese laundry era. Beginning in the late 1800s and lasting for over a century, Chinese immigrants owned dozens of laundries to provide for their families. The historical marker sits outside the WYCA on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. That's where one of the last businesses, Fred Moy Laundry, operated from 1940 to 1976. A short film by Beijing native and UW-Milwaukee lecturer Yinan Wang covers the marker's unveiling and previews a new one expected to be installed at Forest Home Cemetery next spring. WUWM's Eddie Morales asks Wang about the film and his experiences living in Milwaukee for the past decade.
So all my films or like all my works after I came to the U.S. are pretty much about myself and also are pretty much about immigrants. Yeah, because I'm an immigrant myself. So I think that's why the reason why this film or this topic is so interesting to me. Yeah, because the films is about the markers for the laundry and also the markers for the cemetery. But I think the people who are behind of those markers, they were immigrants. So they were immigrants, and I am an immigrant myself. So I feel like there is some sort of like connection, and I feel like that connection is very strong. Yeah, even though we live apart maybe like 100 years, but I still feel them. Yeah, so it's not only on the intellectual level, not only on the emotional level. It's kind of like on my skin level. Yeah, so that's why I really want to make this film.
Yeah, and that cemetery aspect of the marker, so there are two markers. The one that was unveiled at the event recently was for the Chinese laundry era. The one that you just referenced is at the Forest Home Cemetery. And the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, that restricted Chinese immigration, and it lasted for decades. So some Chinese immigrants here, they died and were buried without their families. Can you talk about the significance of Section 48 at the Forest Home Cemetery and its place in the film?
I think I didn't know about Section 48 until I'm making this film. Yeah, so I heard about this from Adam Carr, from Adri Chen, and also from Anna Wang, because they are kind of doing the research about the markers, right? Yeah, so basically the people who buried in this section, the reason of that because they were not allowed to bring their family to reunite with them from China. And also I think another reason is interracial marriage was banned, for those immigrants. Yeah, so these people, I think there are maybe 50 or 60 people, and they just kind of died as a bachelor. It's kind of become a Chinese cemetery.
Part of the film explores the tradition of Chinese tomb sweeping. Can you explain what that is for people unfamiliar with it? What goes into that tradition? And also if there will be any component to that when the next marker is unveiled, if there's anything you can speak to about that.
So tomb sweeping is not only a Chinese tradition, but also kind of very common for the East Asian area, like Japan or Korea or Taiwan. I think it's kind of it's once a year, people they gather together to honor their ancestors. Yeah, so that is kind of the thing we do annually. So even myself and my family. I don't think people they do this a lot in the U.S. They may do the similar things, but in different ways. But the tomb sweeping, so one thing is about clean. So we kind of the people they bring some clothes or wipers, just wiping off the dust and the dirt on the gravestones. And also on the other side, we kind of just bring some foods to the cemetery, because we want you can have something to enjoy in the other world. I think that is another part. And the third part is exploring something like the paper money. Yeah, because it's we want that they can eat good, and we also wish they can live a good life. Yeah, because we think burning the money is a way to transfer the wealth from this world to another world.
Yeah. And you said that that's a tradition that you practice yourself. Has that been throughout your life?
Yeah. So every time when I made a trip back to Beijing, so this is like something that I always do with my mom, with my parents, to my grandparents in Beijing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Some moments from the film, like going back to where the Fred Moy Laundry was located with his granddaughter, Anna Wong. Can you talk about what that was like, revisiting her childhood moments through her eyes as she's leading you through some of her memories? Like, for example, there was a parking lot that was once her backyard with a garage. Can you talk a little bit about some of the characters in the film, some of the people that were featured in it, and some of those experiences that you had?
That's a great question. So we moved to that area like 2 years ago. Personally, I'm very interested in the history, but I didn't know about that area a lot before I met Anna. So after I met her, and because she lived there, and her family, and her parents, and her grandparents, so her whole family just lived in that area for generations. Yeah, and also like during the process, during the course of making this film, and we have to really do a lot of like research about this area. So I was kind of like surprised to hear about. So this part of the city used to be part of downtown Milwaukee, because I walked past, or I walked down this like streets a lot, like every day. So I was trying to like imagine, so what's this neighborhood like used to be like, right here. Yeah, it's kind of like something that I do like daily, because I think she mentioned in the film, like there used to be like a very famous department store called Gimbal, just located there. Yeah, and I was just trying to immerse myself in that space and to imagine, okay, so I'm in this Gimbal from like the 1960s. Yeah. So I wasn't born here, but I do feel like this is my city. I do feel like I have like so many connections with this place. Yeah, so that's kind of like what I got, or like what I take away.
And when you make that comparison about your own experience and past generation experiences here in Milwaukee, how would you describe those comparisons? Are there some similarities, whether good or bad? Are there some distinct differences?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Yeah, I feel like overall, the world is getting better, right? The world is getting better. I feel like the Chinese Exclusion Act is no more there, right? And I think there is definitely like everything is getting better compared to what's happening like 100 years ago. But I think like from like the recent years, I feel like there is a very strong like tendency, like also kind of like repeated what already happens from 100 years ago. I feel like there is a very kind of like strong kind of like pushback for the immigrants.
Does this project overall, does it have any particular significance to you because of your own personal experience, of course, but also because of this heightened focus on immigration policies right now in the U.S.?
So I wasn't thinking about the immigration policy when I was making this film, but I think like another like personal wish, I want to dedicating this film to my child. Yeah, because she was born here and she is a U.S. citizen and she's going to probably live her life here. Yeah, so I want this film can be something like a book or something like a reference for her when she grew up. I mean, during her grew up in Milwaukee, I feel like this film will make her feel not alone. I found that this film make her feel like it belongs to here. Yeah, so she's part of the city and she's part of the like Wisconsin, right? Yeah. Because I think that is something like missing from here. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me about the film and about your experiences, about the things that you learned through this process. So it was really great to chat with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
That was filmmaker Yinan Wong speaking with WUWM's Eddie Morales. Wong plans to submit his film to local film festivals for screening. You can learn more about the new state historical markers coming to Milwaukee County at WUWM.com. This past weekend in Milwaukee was filled with marigolds, family photos, and ofrendas, altars that honor family members who've passed on. They're part of Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead, a holiday with roots in Mexico. One of those celebrations happened Friday at Latino Arts in Milwaukee. It included displays of ofrendas and a performance by Ometeotli Mexican folk dance. WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez has this postcard from the event. First, he spoke to Alejandra Jimenez, the founder of the dance group, and performer Alejandra Rodriguez.
The show is going to be amazing. I think this type of show, at least the years I have been here or involved in the Mexican folk dance, I have seen, of course, performances and all that, but there is a variety of dances and 3 groups from the Midwest. We are going to share one scenario. So it's a really neat way to connect with other Mexican people that are living somewhere else. And also one special thing is that the Ensamble de Cuerdas, the Latino Art String program, is going to play live music. So that is really a really special thing. And there are other dances that they are not that much popular. So we're also bringing that because we have 32 states in Mexico. So each state has their own folklore and their own dances and traditions. So there are tons of them, and we're trying to bring some dances that they haven't seen that much, like international.
Showtime is coming up. Can you tell me what tonight we're celebrating or what we'll be seeing as an audience?
Yeah, so we are celebrating Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, and in the way that we like to do it is by movement and music. So we're going to be dancing, pre-Hispanic dances, indigenous dances, and post-colonial dances, which is Mexican folk dance. And everything is going to be related to Day of the Dead, which is our legacy that we have nowadays. Thank you to our ancestors that has passed this knowledge through the years, and we want to keep it and pass it to the next generations.
Can you tell me what the night and the event means to you?
Well, it's a way to connect with my ancestors and also with my culture. I came here 13 years ago, and I was so happy that I met Ale and that we got to to do this together and share all culture and experiences.
Someone recommended your dance group because they said it was open, inclusive, and it feels culturally on point. What do you think sets you apart?
I don't know if it's different from others, but I can tell you what we do. And the first thing is that we have passion in our soul, and it's something really important. So for us, it's not the clapping or the audience. It's more about sharing our culture and sharing what Mexico is. It is the beauty of Mexico. So we don't see it like a job. It's more about our hobby and our passion, that what we are doing. So I just feel that if you love what to do and you are in no matter what, you just pass that love to others. And I think that is a reflection of what probably other people see.
Did you feel something like that when you came to Milwaukee and you arrived here and you found Ale and the dance group? Did it give you a sense of home?
Yes, it did. I didn't know that Ale was a dancer, but we started before COVID. Now I can say that I feel like they are my family and that I made a good group of friends here. So yeah.
About tonight, are either of you nervous?
I don't want to call it nervous. It's more about excitement, because if you say I'm nervous, everyone is gonna start shaking. So it's always is an excitement, and is, I don't know, when you see the audience and the music and the colors, it just gives you so much power and so much life. So it's everything that I mentioned is what it keeps pushing me to keep on this mission, because this is at the end a mission that we are carrying our own history, the history from Mexico, and it's what we have in our hands. So probably we are not a book, but we are dancers, and this is a way that we can share that knowledge that right now we have that responsibility if we want it or not, but we are here and we are really proud of representing Mexico.
Thinking about what's happening in this country and visibility and sharing culture right now, what do you think that responsibility is? Can you talk more about that?
I think our role nowadays is really important because it is actually one of our missions. Our mission is to foster Mexican culture and also to make a multicultural understanding. So sometimes when we don't know other cultures, we don't care about it or we don't see the beauty of other cultures. So this is a really way to share and to let the people know what Mexico brings to the world.
I just want the opportunity to say welcome to all of you. My name is Jacobo Lobo. I am the Managing Artistic Director for Latino Arts.
Friday was a huge night for Latino arts for a couple reasons. One, because Omatochli's concert, but also it was the opening reception for their Day of the Dead Ofrendas exhibit. Now, the Spaces Gallery was filled with different altars, honoring loved ones and paying tribute to people and places across the city and state.
We have school groups, we have community members, and we have different community groups.
My name is Carmen Aguilar, and I'm a scientist at the School of Freshwater Sciences from UWM.
And I'm Melanie Arians. I'm an artist and the creative arts manager for Milwaukee Water Commons.
Can you tell me about the ofrenda and what you made here tonight?
So Carmen and I have collaborated in the classroom and on some art projects with students, and we've always wanted to make an ofrenda to water as part of this show, and she always wanted to do something artsy instead of so sciencey. So we combined arts and science and made an ofrenda with diatoms, which is like the smallest little microscopic thing in the water that's a very important part of the food web. Our idea was that, if we're taking care of the smallest, most important part of the food web, we are taking care of ourselves. Because if they're healthy, we've got healthy water for us, for humans.
My name is Izzy Boykas, and I'm the middle school art teacher at the University School of Milwaukee. So we're looking at 62 book nooks that were put together by the 5th grade students. And we have organized them, so we actually created a little bit of a Narnia moment with two rows of bookshelves facing each other that have a black draping over it that really kind of creates in itself a nook for you to experience. Book nooks are an echo of nichos that are a more traditional memoriam in the Dia de los Muertos tradition. But we've kind of connected it to the more modern hobby of creating a book nook.
Why was it important to make an ofrenda? And for Dia de los Muertos, what does the actual event mean, the day mean? I love the idea of paying homage to our water and our waterways locally, but what is the culture and what does the day mean?
So I'm from Mexico City, so I grew up with making ofrendas about family and such. And Melanie has been very inspirational on how do you connect with the water. And one of the things that, as I was alluding to, things in the lake has been species that have lost and come and gone. And as you know, there's a lot of shipwrecks, and a lot of people have lost their lives as well in the lake. And some people survived and all these kinds of aspects. So it's really important to not only think about the aspects of food webs and that, but the human aspect and how people in the past really went out of their way to go into the middle of the lake with a canoe and things like that. So that's one of the ideas that we have.
That audio postcard from the Latino Arts Dia de los Muertos event was produced by WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez. Later in the show, we'll learn what zombie trees are and how to spot them. But first, we'll meet a photographer who captures what we can see in the night sky. Keep listening to Lake Effect on Milwaukee's NPR. This is Like Effect on Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Humans look for connections to the cosmos through many outlets, whether it's simply looking up at the stars, going to the planetarium, or through astrophotography. That's the practice of photographing the night sky. Travis Nowitzki is a self-taught astrophotographer and a lifelong resident of the Grand Portage Anishinaabe Nation in northeast Minnesota. He captures breathtaking images of the northern lights, the Milky Way, star trails, and much more. His images also honor the cultural significance of the cosmos and indigenous traditions. Nowitzki will share his work at UW-Milwaukee's Manfred Olson Planetarium later this week. And to talk more about it, Nowitzki, along with planetarium director Gene Creighton, join me now. Gene and Travis, welcome to Lake Effect.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation.
Of course. Travis, we'll start with you. You're a self-taught nature and wildlife photographer, and you've been capturing mainly your ancestral homelands in Minnesota for over 30 years. So to start, can you share what motivated you to pick up a camera for the first time?
Yeah, my initial motivation, my mom said it was my dad's inspiration, because when I was as little as 5 years old, I started going out with him to photograph, to sit under the stars when he was photographing the stars with film cameras back in the mid 80s. So that was kind of when I got my first exposure, so to speak, of the night sky, and lots of time just sitting there watching him work and getting this appreciation for what it's like to, starbathe.
Yeah, can you explain what starbathing is for people who might not know?
Sure. It's not really a term that I used a lot until recently, because I started hearing it and thought that sounds kind of cool. If you've heard of forest bathing, it's kind of the same thing. It's just going out into this environment and just trying to soak it in as much as you can and, kind of try to get into this mindfulness awareness kind of a state of being. And so, yeah, just bathing in the starlight, literally, like you're out there underneath the starlight and soaking it in and bathing in it.
And your photography offers us a unique glimpse into your home in Minnesota, and you photograph elsewhere as well, but your work also encapsulates indigenous star knowledge and cultural connections, and especially learning about how you started just going with your dad and observing him at his work. So can you share a little bit more about how your cultural connections drive your work and why you want to share it with others?
Sure. I will say, or I'll preface this by saying that I didn't really learn a lot about indigenous star knowledge until more recent years. Even though I grew up in a tribal community, there just wasn't a lot of exposure to indigenous star knowledge for various reasons. There just weren't the people around that knew a lot about it, or if there were, I didn't know them. And so that has been a more recent kind of discovery, if you will, for me. It really kind of came about with the book project, the Spirits Dancing book, and the Northern Nights Starry Skies documentary that I was a part of. So the connections that I made with Annette S. Lee of Native Skywatchers, and then Carl Gaboy, who has published a couple of different books. Mainly the one that inspired me was Talking Sky, where he introduces some of the Ojibwe constellations and their meanings. And then just collaborating with them on these two projects, it's really been a very powerful thing for me to discover this star knowledge that has been a part of my culture, but really has been largely unknown to me until my adult years.
It's encouraging, too, that you can have new perspectives on your work and the world around you, decades after you start honing in on this skill. You have amazing photos and videos of things like the Northern Lights, the Milky Way, there's star trails, moonlight, and so much more. So why night sky photography? What's special to you about going out at night and capturing these images?
Well, I think it started as kind of because not a lot of people were doing it at the time when I started getting into it. There's a lot more people that are into it now. It's become quite prevalent and something that a lot of people seek out nowadays. 20 to 25 years ago, when I started dabbling in night sky photography myself, when I first started getting cameras that were capable of capturing Milky Way and Northern Lights. But at that time, there weren't a whole lot of people that were doing it. So it was kind of a way to develop my own niche within photography. And just through, you mentioned earlier that I am self-taught. I've read a lot of books about photography, but I've never taken, I didn't go to school for it. I've never taken any classes for it. It's all been reading about it and just trial and error. And, over the years, just practicing it enough and doing it enough, I've gotten pretty good at it, I guess, to where it has become my specialty now, I would say.
And Jean, when did you first become familiar with Travis's work, and how did this collaboration for a planetarium show come about?
Last year, I was invited by Margaret Newton and Mike Zimmerman to come visit them in the northern shore of Lake Superior. We finally found dates for Victoria, the assistant director of the planetarium, and I to go. And there was just these few days in June that we could all make it work. And Margaret said that it would be great for you to come to this part of the world and great to meet people on the reservation and in the community. It'll open your eyes. And it was true. So I think the first day we were there, Travis came for dinner and we ate together and we had a little chat. And it turned out that the very next day, he was giving a talk about this beautiful book, Spirits Dancing, in a bookstore in Grand Marais called Drury Lane. And when he started talking, an unassuming man started showing these beautiful pictures. And I thought, oh my God, these are the most beautiful astrophotography images I've ever seen. And I've seen quite a few. And the reason why they were so special to me, there's a human element in it. It's not just, okay, here's some pretty stuff, but somehow it connected the celestial to the human. And since that seems to be one of my missions in life, that yes, it's lovely to look up at the universe, lovely to understand it as much as we can and try to understand it. But the thing that ultimately brings it together is when we understand that we're part of this and that we are connected to it. And I think his work does a beautiful job at capturing that.
And Travis, I'm sure there's a lot of steps that go between you heading out at night, working to capture whatever's sticking out at you or what you're hoping to get, to Jean or someone like myself seeing your finished image. So can you just take us through what your average night shoot might look like or involve? Because with night photography, there's definitely quite a few more crucial steps in order to capture the night sky.
Well, I try to keep it as simple as possible. You see a lot of photographers that are photographing through telephoto lenses with star tracker devices. So that's something that'll, allow your camera rig to move to follow the movement of the stars by, our movement in relation to the stars more accurately. And I don't have any of that kind of stuff. So my stuff is all kind of wide angle. It connects, like Jean was mentioning, not just the human element, but the terrestrial earthly element. So, because I've got landscape in the foreground and then the night sky above it. So earlier I mentioned mindfulness, and that my approach to photography is very definitely a mindful process that I put a lot of thought into and a lot of planning, and it takes a lot of time and it's very intentional. So, it hasn't always been that way. I used to go out a lot more frequently and just shoot like crazy and end up with all kinds of stuff. But in more recent years, I've slowed down quite a bit to where I don't go out as often. And when I do, it has more of that intentional aspect to it where I'm not just going out and wandering around. I'm going to a spot that I've thought about, that I've been to half a dozen times already at different times of day and different times of the year, and thought about where the Milky Way is going to line up, or if there's northern lights in that particular spot, which way do I have to face to photograph them, and will it work in that location? So there's a lot of planning. maybe it'll take a couple of weeks. Sometimes it takes a couple of years before I actually go back to a spot to then photograph it at night. And typically, like not like during the day, you just take a picture and it's click, you're done. Night exposures take more time because they typically have to be 15 to 30 seconds. Sometimes a couple of hours if you're doing a star trail image. So yeah, there's definitely more involvement in it for sure.
And to take such a mindful, solitary act, something you are doing on your own in the night sky, and then to share these photos with others and to travel with your work, what are some of your favorite parts of sharing your photography with people and interacting with them after you capture it on such a solo mission, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, you are correct there. And most of the time I'm out there by myself, and I do like to come back and kind of connect with the broader world with this. And over time, I think the most rewarding thing for me has been when I share these photos is that people share stories with me. Everybody has either a connection to the sky and a story they want to share, or they have a desire to form a connection and to, get stories of their own. And that to me has been such a powerful thing because it just resonates with everybody I've come across. It's an honor to be that inspiration in some way for people.
And Jean, what are you looking forward to in this upcoming planetarium show with Travis? It's always fun when you can kind of change up the format, and obviously it's still in line with your mission and looking at a night sky, but having it viewed through Travis's lens, essentially.
Travis is so talented and such a wonderful human being. I think that it makes the call to look up and enjoy the night sky even more powerful, especially for people who live in cities who really don't have the chance to see the kind of sky that Travis is showing us, where the stars are reflected in the water. Like, this is the stuff of dreams for people who live in cities, people who've never seen the Milky Way, never mind the Northern Lights. So I feel like for some people, it will be the beginning of a journey.
Jean and Travis, thank you both so much for joining me today ahead of your Manfred Olson Planetarium event.
Thank you.
Jean Creighton is the director of UW-Milwaukee's Manfred Olson Planetarium and our regular astronomy contributor. Travis Nowitzki is an astrophotographer and will be at the planetarium this Friday to share his work in a show called Spirits Dancing. You can check out some of Nowitzki's work and find more information about the show at wuwm.com. Spooky season may be over, but there may still be a hidden horror lingering in your neighborhood. As the seasons change, storms and heavy winds could be creating a phenomenon known as zombie trees. To learn more, Lake Effect's Joy Powers is joined by arborist Adam Passo from Davy Tree Expert Company in Milwaukee.
So we're going to start with the biggest question. What are zombie trees?
Yes. What are zombie trees? Zombie trees are trees that have been affected somehow by some outside factors. So it could be a high wind from a storm, could be drought. A lot of times it's things that you can't see as an untrained professional that are the scary part of the zombie trees is that, there could be a crack from a high wind that it kind of twisted, and it's just kind of sitting there in purgatory until it does something. It grows or it falls down. You could have drought where on the inside of the tree it kind of dries up, and that's where you could have some decay happening that you can't see. There's also root issues that could be, not visible to an untrained eye, and a certified arborist could see that there's some girdling roots, there's some root rot. It's just a tree that looks okay. It's hanging in there, but a lot of times it's a slow decline, and then eventually you see the effects, and it's devastating.
Now, this is an issue that has been growing for some reason. Why are we seeing these increasingly in Wisconsin and seemingly around the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, we're getting more extreme weather patterns, higher winds during the spring. It's always who knows what's going to happen. You get some major straight line winds coming through. You could even have some limbs that are hanging up in the canopy of a really leafy tree. Can't see it, but an arborist can definitely tell. And that's when, who knows what happens. It can just sit there for months, years even, and then it falls down.
And I guess that really gets to the issue with zombie trees, because you think, well, yeah, sure, trees get sick, they die just like anything else. But it seems like one of the problems here is that these are trees that, for all intents and purposes, look fine and then kind of on a dime can die. And it seems like that's what causes the next problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. There's times I've been sitting in my truck. This happened recently. I was sitting in my truck and we had a really heavy wind the day before. I went to go look at a tree that was on a house. I was sitting in there in my truck, and about 15 yards behind me, this huge red oak just falls across the road for no apparent reason. It'd been sitting there, probably compromised from the wind, and it just, boom, down it goes. And it could hit me, could have hit anybody walking along. So it's kind of scary stuff.
For sure. I mean, it's almost like something falling from the sky, except it is basically falling from the sky to the side of you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a zombie eating brains, but it's just as scary.
Yeah. Now, what can you do? Because it seems like these are issues, at least some of them, that can be solved if you're able to find them.
Yeah, there's ways to protect trees, even if they're compromised. There's cabling, bracing. There's ways that we can help the health of the tree. Maybe some pruning that will get rid of the hazards, and then the tree can, trees are really resilient. They can figure out a way to take over whatever was lost. So that energy just gets redirected, and trees will survive at all costs.
Now, you've said a lot of the time it's difficult to know when this has started to happen to a tree. Are there little things that people can look out for to go, oh, this tree might have an issue?
Yeah. The first sign is canopy decline. The leaves were really nice size last year. This year, they're a little bit smaller. You can start seeing a little bit more light through the canopy. Even in a dense canopy, if right down the middle, you can see light through there, that's probably a bad junction, and it probably needs to be cabled together. If it's a whole kind of decline in the tree, have somebody out. There could be something more sinister going on. We can help. If it's just, an old tree that's kind of in decline, we can help that a lot. But you'll notice maybe a little light color on the bark. It's a real dark bark, and then you see this line of light color. That's a dead giveaway that maybe there's a nasty crack that we can't see all the way through, but it's just the start.
It seems like really the last thing is taking down the whole tree. It seems like there's a variety of intervention methods before then, but when is it that we go, this tree's got to go?
Yeah. If you see some root heaving, there could be the ground coming up a little bit on one side that you didn't really notice the other day. That's a big sign that the roots were severed. Sometimes those roots can be grown back. You'll see a hump around a tree. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a recent thing and the tree is compensated, put a bunch of roots out, and it's stabilized again. But a lot of times that's not going to happen. One side of the tree will fracture, one side those cells will compress. Each situation's different. That's what's exciting about tree care, We're all individuals, so are they. So it's just having a trained eye, take a look, and make sure that everybody's safe.
All right. Well, Adam, thank you so much for joining us here on Lake Effect and sharing your work.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Adam Passo is a certified arborist and district manager for Davey Tree Expert Company in Milwaukee. He spoke with Lake Effect's Joy Powers in 2023. And that's Lake Effect for today. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. If you've missed any of Lake Effect this week, you can find all of our conversations at wuwm.com. If you'd like to take the show on the go, simply download the Lake Effect podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. Tomorrow on Lake Effect, we'll learn what comes next after federal funding was restored to a Milwaukee social studies education program. Find out more tomorrow, but for today, thank you so much for joining us right here on listener-supported 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.